Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, great. All right, so this is the March 16th meeting of the Common Council Committee on Operations. Present tonight, members are myself, Richard Conti, Chair. I see Council Member Hoey, Council Member Igo, and Council Member Kimbrough, Chair, also members. Also with us is Council Member Love, and staff is Research Counsel J.R. Pichardo and City Clerk Danielle Gillespie. I think I've gotten everyone. So tonight's agenda is consideration of local law L of 2020 by Councilmember Love in relation to Common Council residency, and local law A 2021 by myself in relation to nonpartisan municipal elections, both of which are amendments to the city charter. So procedure for tonight, just going to briefly, we'll take each proposal individually, local law L first. Just going to briefly summarize. We'll take any public comment, then take discussion, and then proceed to action. And I also note that Councilmember Frederick has also joined us, also a committee member. So we have all 5 committee members here. So with that, I'm going to, and just to really quickly, as I said, both of these are amendments to the city charter, which was adopted by the voters in 1998 via a charter review commission that was then subject to voter approval. Since then, it has been amended twice, once via a commission that was appointed under Mayor Jennings, a second time by a local law that was adopted by the council. And both of those recommendations or amendments were also subject to voter approval. And so as we proceed tonight and consider these charter amendments, which, as I say, if they do move out of committee and go to the council and are signed by the mayor, are subject to voter approval, all things being considered, we should really consider whether it's just appropriate, where we let the voters ultimately decide the issue, since the charter is their document. And unless there's something really egregious wrong, it's probably, from my perspective, appropriate to try to move these items forward and let the voters make the decision and have a full, robust debate via the electoral process. But in any event, let's take up local law 2020, local law L of 2020 by Councilmember Love first. And this, as I say, amends the city charter to provide that council members or be a resident of their ward for 1 year prior to taking office. Under the current charter, requires for elected officials that there be 1 year residency within the city. That applies to both citywide offices as well as ward or council member offices. For council members, it requires, if they have not been, if they're not currently or a resident of the ward when they run or were elected, it requires that they establish residency in the ward before taking office. So in other words, the residency requirement currently is 1 year within the city for council members, regardless of where you live. This would establish a requirement that the residency be within the ward for 1 year prior to running or taking office. And I believe the language is similar to what is included in the county charter for the county legislature. It does make some exceptions regarding a year when you have reapportionment and where the lines might change and a council member can be in a different district. And it allows, in that case, a council member to run in a contiguous district if their residency has been moved out. And so Joyce, if you want to, I think that summarizes it.
Yeah, it does. It summarizes. I just think that we just incorrect, fall in line with the county. This was a long time coming. I think, yeah, but I mean, you said it all, Richard. You
Okay.
said it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I just asked if we have any public comment, Danielle?
I am so sorry. I got 3 computers and 3 different mics going on, so I was wiggling the wrong one.
All right.
We have no comments for this particular piece of legislation. All the comments are for the next local law that's on the table for discussion.
Okay. So no public comment, then we can proceed to further discussion. And is there any discussion on this proposal? Recognize Mr. Igo.
Gotta unmute yourself, Joe.
You're still, there you go.
I actually thought this was in place now. I think it's good. It should be, just like it's being proposed.
Any other discussion?
For me.
Councilmember Frederick?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. I'm just curious, how long has this been implemented at the county level?
I think it was in their original charter, and I think their charter is older, was adopted prior to ours.
Yes, I think you're correct, Richard. It's been there for a while. And their E-code is newer than ours, so there's not as much track changes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I, just note in reading this, it does apply to a council member in terms of the reapportionment process. It does make an exception for a council member who may have been reapportioned out of their district to allow them, to satisfy the residency requirement. But for a member of the public, a non-council member who might be considering, a run for a particular seat, if they were reapportioned out, it would not apply to them. So just a notation on that. But if there is no further discussion,
I'll make a motion, report it out of committee with a favorable recommendation.
Mr. Igo makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Kimbrough, any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous and the motion is adopted. Also note that Mr. Ballerin has joined us, Councilmember Ballerin. The next local law is local law A of 2021 by myself. This would provide for nonpartisan municipal elections. In other words, the elections only for city offices would be held on a nonpartisan basis, where candidates would petition based on the provisions in the election law that relates to independent nominations, and would appear, their names would appear on the ballot without an indication of party affiliation. And so there would not, wouldn't be a primary, but basically November would be the actual general election, and it's intended to expand the voter base and the number of people who are able to participate. I'm going to open to any public comment first, and then we can move on to committee discussion. So turn to
All right.
Danielle.
So Ford McLean of 263 Elm Street shares the following. This comment is in support of local law A of 2021, nonpartisan elections. I strongly support the proposed law to reform elections so the candidates may run as individuals and not as designees of a certain party, and that voters of all affiliations or non-affiliations are able to vote in these elections in the city. This change in election law would encourage candidates of the majority party, the Democratic Party, which comprises 71% of active voters, to reach out to all voters of their catchment area and not just those of their party. It would also make an incumbent elected in this type of election accountable to all voters in their catchment area as well. Democracy and the development of good public policy would be well served by this change. Elections could be structured in a two-tiered system. Spring elections would include all candidates running for office. A fall election could be held between the top two vote getters if no candidate in the spring election receives 50% plus one vote. I support the proposed change in election law and believe that the council should approve it and forward it for public discussion, a signature by the mayor, and a referendum. That one is from Ford McLean. We also received a public comment from Dale Ghetto of 32 Colonial Ave. I am writing in support of Richard Conti's bill to amend local law A 2021, amending section 202 of the Albany City Charter to provide for nonpartisan municipal elections. The proposed amendment will enfranchise voters, especially our young people who desperately want to remain or return to a more vibrant and inclusive Albany. We have seen a steady decline in voter enrollment and voter participation throughout the city. Ask yourself, what was the turnout in your last victory, the victory before that? Could it be that we are a one-party town and have grown complacent with our outreach and engagement? Support for this proposal is growing and has come from the editorial page of the Times-Union, where one writer encapsulated my sentiment. Low voter turnout is emblematic of a broken democracy. Common Council members, you have a chance to enfranchise your constituents and engage the citizens of Albany in robust discussions about civics, leadership, and the future direction of our city if you pass this legislation. It is no secret that we are all Democrats and have enjoyed the spoils that come along with being in essence a one-party town. It will not be easy to vote for this bill, but the cost is maintaining a system that is not working for all the residents of our great city. I would be remiss if I did not also remind you of recent comments from our newly elected Democratic County Chair, who in response to Councilmember Conti's proposal said, look at the nonpartisan school board elections, low voter turnout, which by the way, are off-cycle elections when turnout is always lower than in November. He used this as justification for saying, I see no reason for the city of Albany to change a process that has worked effectively for a long time. Has he examined the city of Albany's turnout and have a plan for civic engagement? Please note that is the same leader who in October of 2020, after being elected to the position, said in the Altamont Enterprise, I am eager to unite and reclaim the Helderberg Hills towns. This commentary points to the very essence of why this proposal is so important. Voting to pass this local law does not necessarily indicate your support for nonpartisan elections, but what it does do is respect your constituents by opening the door to people and ideas. The voters of Albany should be the ultimate deciders. If our Democratic Party positions and platform speak to our neighbors, then for certain, we will win in nonpartisan elections as well. The next comment is from Karen Strong of Chestnut Street. I'm writing in support of local law A of 2021 because there is a problem in our city with voter participation. Albany, an overwhelmingly Democratic city, so all of our elections are decided in the primaries where turnout is low. In 2017, only 23% of the city's registered voters participated in the primary elections. And if you just look at Democratic participation, it was just 31%. Because primaries essentially decide the winner, then general election turnout was barely higher than that. Also note that there are only 20 citywide elected positions in the city of Albany, and 16 of them are already nonpartisan. I'm a proud Democrat and have been for many years. Important decisions about who leads our wards and our city have the widest possible voter participation. The current system depresses turnout. Nonpartisan elections are not the only option to address turnout. and I encourage the council to explore increased voter access and participation. And then we have an additional comment that reads as follows. Dear members of the Council Operations and Ethics Committee, thank you for the opportunity to be heard on local law A. I encourage you to support the proposal for nonpartisan elections in Albany with the amendment that the system be established as a 10-year pilot. Albany voters deserve the opportunity to make this important choice for themselves. I hope you will take my support for this proposal in the spirit in which is intended. The belief that nonpartisan elections will better serve voters and not as a criticism of the city's rich partisan political history or the people who continue the legacy today. Last year, we witnessed the power of voter participation as people across the country fought for voting systems that were more inclusive and fair. Those values mean more when we fight for them, even when it runs counter to our own political interests. I am an enrolled Democrat and have no intention of changing my affiliation, but I recognize how the current system, which generally benefits candidates I support, limits the meaningful choices available to all voters in Albany. The reality of our current system is that a small and generally shrinking number of voters have a disproportionate say in selecting our leaders. And while partisan elections are not explicitly exclusionary, the effect of them in de facto one-party towns like Albany is to exclude voters who, for whatever reason, cannot or do not want to enroll in the dominant party. In Albany, about 28% of active voters, some 14,000 people, are not enrolled as Democrats. These voters have almost no meaningful voice in the outcome of city elections. The word meaningful is critical. Yes, anyone registered to vote can vote in the general election, but if the election is effectively decided before November, the vote is not meaningful and those voters have little incentive to participate. While this is not the fault of the dominant party, it's a flaw in the system that anyone who values healthy democratic institutions should want to see fixed. In 2017, the three-way Democratic mayoral primary, effectively the entire mayoral election, was decided by 13,469 voters. That works out to about 16% of Albany's estimated voting age population that year. 29% of all active voters in the city and less than half of active Democrats. In the general election, just 16,360 votes were cast, a turnout of about 35%. In raw numbers, the 2017 Democratic primary turnout was 10% lower than the 2005 and 7% lower than the 2009. Looking back 2 decades, 2017 saw at least a 30% decline in Democratic primary turnout since 1997, despite the fact that the city's population has slightly increased over roughly the same span. This matters because our current partisan system effectively delegates the selection of the city's leaders to a shrinking and likely less representative slice of the primary electorate. While low rates of voter participation are a national problem, especially in local elections, no one can argue that the current system in Albany is generating widespread voter participation, let alone enthusiasm. The question we have to ask ourselves is this: are we willing to accept that because the weight of our city's deep political history makes it seem so inconceivable to do otherwise? A common counter argument to local law A is that there is no real barrier to participation because more voters could have a meaningful say if they enrolled in a dominant party and voted in the primary. This is true, but they should not have to do that, nor should anyone have to explain why they do not want to. There are many personal and professional reasons why people cannot or do not want to affiliate with a political party. Partisanship is not a precondition of the right to vote in the United States, but in Albany, it has effectively become a precondition of having that vote matter. Others argue party affiliations are an important shorthand for voters unfamiliar with the candidates themselves. But one-party dominance has become so complete in Albany that even that affiliation has lost meaning. Primary voters now rely on cross endorsements from third parties to decipher which candidate from the dominant party might actually share their values. This convoluted process obscures a larger problem. Our partisan system makes it easier for voters to know very little about the candidate they are electing. Nonpartisan elections alone are not a solution to this problem, but removing partisan affiliation from the ballot is an important step toward ensuring our civic infrastructure does not reinforce it. Local law A would simply ensure that every candidate who qualifies is presented on the ballot on equal footing. It would remove partisan hurdles to ballot access and allow all registered voters to have a meaningful say in the elections that actually choose our leaders. These are fundamentally democratic ideals. I was initially skeptical of nonpartisan elections because some research suggests that they favor incumbents and generally those candidates who already have more name recognition and influence. It is difficult, though, to see how that differs radically from the electoral landscape that exists today. But if the council understandably has reservations, there is an easy solution. Amend local law A to establish nonpartisan elections as a 10-year pilot, after which there will be data to evaluate the pilot's success or failure across 2 election cycles. A pilot would remove the need to speculate about the impact of such a system in Albany and provide a safety valve to return to the status quo if that is what voters want. If political party organizations are truly essential to democracy in Albany, they will still be around when the pilot ends. In the meantime, candidates preferred by the majority of the dominant party should still win handily. Local law A would not change that, nor would it ban partisan political activity or endorsements. It would simply keep party affiliation off the ballot. It's not a radical idea. Nonpartisan elections are the norm in some 3/4 of cities across the country. As you consider local law A, I hope you will ask yourselves how voters' interests are served by the continuation of the system as it exists today. The lens for evaluating our civic infrastructure should not be whether it's simply good enough, but whether we have the capacity to make it better. I believe that local law A presents an opportunity to make it better. It would be a missed opportunity not to try. Thank you for your time. And that's from Jordan Carleo, evangelist of the 14th Ward.
Is there no further comment?
I believe that concludes it, but bear with me 1 second.
Okay, just confirm that.
And that is all I have today.
Great, thank you. So just to quickly lay out the purpose, and as indicated, it is the predominant model in cities across the country, not necessarily here in New York, although there are some models in New York State, but 3/4 of cities nationwide do have nonpartisan elections for municipal office. And earlier today, I did send out some information based on some research and from the National League of Cities, just laying out the extent to which nonpartisan elections actually exist. 3/4 nationwide, a ranking in terms of the top 30 cities, an indication of the extent of nonpartisan versus partisan elections. I also, to some extent, some of the argument for it is based on enfranchising more voter participation and involvement, and the theory that municipal government itself is that level of government closest to the people, and it should be that we should do the most we can to enfranchise people to be able to participate in municipal government and municipal elections, and making decisions as far as who's going to elect us, represent us. And one way of doing that is also expanding the ability of people to participate regardless of partisan affiliation. But if you also look at Albany itself in terms of voter participation, and I'm going back actually to when I first got involved in politics in '93, where there was a much heavier level of participation in the primary system than there is today. There's been a steady decline. And I did send out some information on that to try to provide, just give you a handle as far as the level of participation or turnout Let's look at mayoral primaries from, back in 1993, which is one of the first contests that I really got involved in, Jerry Jennings versus Harold Joyce, where you had a turnout of in excess of 23,000 in the Democratic primary that year. And then if you look at the mayoral elections in 2005, 2009, 13, and 17, you see a significant drop off even between, for 2017, which was a hotly contested three-way race, versus the contested races in 2005 and 2009. Which were higher, but you basically are seeing a drop off in terms of participation. And then I also looked at the level of partisan enrollment, the level of enrollment by Democratic enrollment versus non-Democratic enrollment. And the table that I shared just looks at the non-Democratic enrollment by ward and citywide. And again, it shows that there is a drop in the level, well, there's an increase in the level of non-Democratic enrollment over the years between 2017, which was a mayoral election year, and then 2021, which is a mayoral election year. And you can see that there were some significant increases in non-Democratic enrollment as a percentage of total enrollment in the city, up 7.7%, but in certain wards, especially in some of the lower wards, were increased by double-digit numbers. So you see a trend growing where there's less and less party affiliation or identification, and more independence. And I think that just also reflects the changing demographics of the city in terms of people who are moving in, who are not as identified with partisan politics, but view themselves more independent. And then, of course, I did, just to remind of the TU editorial that came out in January of 21, which was in support. And basically the whole thrust was, it's an issue that is worthy of discussion, and we should really move it to allow the voters in November to make that decision as to whether or not they want to move in that direction. So my interest in moving this forward is we have a problem in terms of voter participation. In terms of municipal elections, we should really enfranchise the electorate as much as possible by eliminating barriers and bringing more people into the system. And that's what nonpartisan elections do, as experienced by cities across the country. There is less party identification. I think it's a worthy process to move forward. And would improve, hopefully, potentially, voter participation. And also, when you involve more voters, there is more ownership. And when there is more ownership, you have a stronger city overall. So that's why I've advanced the proposal, which I've been thinking about for a while. And this had been drafted a while back, but I never really put it in. I think it's an issue that really we should, regardless of how you feel, we should move it to the ballot in November, let the voters decide, and have that discussion in November, as an amendment to the charter. So those are my thoughts, and I'd be happy to open it up to discussion. And also note that Council President Ellis has also joined us. Any discussion? I guess not. Where everybody's mind is already made up.
Trying to unmute.
Okay, Mr. Igo and then Mr. Hoey. And then,
Richard, we've talked about the lower and lower turnout. 14th Ward hasn't had a low turnout in a long while. Okay? I just looked and kicked out some numbers. Even when I ran against Republican, Joe Sullivan got 600 Republican votes. I got almost 3,000 or 1,300. Same with Mike Whalen, same against Howard Greenstein, we get great turnouts. And some of the issues are, some of the people that are actually registering, they think, they all come up and say, well, I'm an independent, I can vote in the Independence Party and this and that. A lot of people don't understand. We also have an awful lot of students from SUNY and other colleges in the city, and they might be registered to vote, okay? But they rarely do it other than a presidential year. And the big issue is, I think, is just apathy, complete apathy, and it's going like that. I remember a lot of the lower wards. I walked a lot of those wards with Harold Joyce against Jerry in 2000, what was it, 13 or no, 19 something, I don't know, 97. But I rang so many doorbells, and I bet you 1 out of maybe 7 units where people were even registered to vote. They're moved, new people in, whatever, that is an issue. And it does come along with home ownership and renters, and for different reasons, a lot of transients. So I don't see a need for it right now. And I don't think Albany should single itself out when the rest of Albany County, the town of Colony, and all the other localities are keeping it the same. If the state wants to do it, so be it, okay? But to just pick out our own city, I don't go along with it. And, you know, Richard, where I hear a lot of the people, at least the comments, and I think everyone was from the 6th Ward. So they aren't too happy, and for some reasons, I don't know, now you're bringing this up on the way out the door? I don't know. Seems
I think 2 of the comments came from your ward.
Oh, yeah, Dale, I know.
And
But it was,
Mr.
but it's okay there on the school.
Angeles also.
It's okay there on the, when everybody can vote for the school board or the school budget, and it's okay when just the people have kids in the school, all right, the teachers like that. So you can't have everything both ways. So that's all I have to say, but I'm against it.
Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, I'm against it also. You know, one of the comments was that with the low turnout of the school board, and I did get the numbers from when the school board election and budget election was held at the same time as the election. Oh, hang on one second. Sorry. So, you know, we had 3,200 people voted for the budget, and the highest board member to get a vote was 2,300. So, I mean, there is, and this is during the November election cycle. Now, they had changed it some years ago. I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, it did change to June for whatever reason. But, you know, we keep playing around with this election cycle. And I'm just throwing this out. You know, we're out in February and in early March. Well, it's actually March this year, trying to get petitions signed. They moved it from the primary, you know, in September to June. So we're fooling around and we're disenfranchising people. And I mean, and, you know, we're in a COVID epidemic and stuff like that. The whole idea of parties is to put forward somebody that represents the ideals that, and it's from the national level down through the state, through the county, that they will stand up to those ideals that we put forth. And, you know, and there are some people supported Trump, but not too many in the city of Albany, thank God. And we know what happened those 4 years. And it's like a breath of sunshine right now. So again, I'm against it. I don't believe this is going to enfranchise more people to vote. You know, I always thought I ran against Frank Camiso on the Independence Party line that Joe mentioned. And I thought, hey, I'm going to get all these students. We got, you know, 7,000 students living on campus. You know, we had 90 people voted. I put out literature and really fought hard on this independent line. And, you know, people just don't care, especially students. They care about a president's race, you know, and they don't want to vote in a local race. I do argue with them, hey, the judges that you elect here are the ones that are going to sentence you when you get caught drunk driving or whatever. And that didn't seem to go over too well. But, you know, what's surprising when we talk about the school board and the taxes, the school taxes are the highest taxes that a homeowner pays. Okay, they're like, it's at least 20 to 30% more than your regular city taxes. And we can't get people to come out. You know, taxation without representation is tyranny. So I really don't see this being a good thing at this point. It sounds good. You know, if you want, I can get 40 or 50 people to make comments, but I don't want to drive people crazy. But I could get them if you want to do that. But I didn't even bother on this one. But I'm going to vote no.
Miss Der Kimbrough, council members, committee members first.
Yes, I between Mr. Igo and Mr. Hoey's responses, that's how I feel. That's a near perfect argument against this. Voter apathy. I mean, I talked to a lot of voters in my ward, and it's not the partisanship that makes people not show up. But I'd also add that one of the commenters mentioned the comment about it would make us accountable to all, voters from every party and no party. That I support, and I work for all of the folks in my ward, regardless of party, regardless of a party affiliation. If they voted for me or not, or agree with me or not, I support and take care of all my folks. So I too am not in agreement with this at this point in time.
Councilmember Frederick.
Thank you. I have to agree with my colleagues as well. I think Councilmember Hoey really hit the nail on the head with one of his statements, that you vote for your party and your values. And there's a difference between a very active voter, someone who's super engaged with you as a council member, someone who follows up and you follow up consistently and they really get to know you on that personal basis. And then there's a level of name recognition. People know you, you stop by their home, they know you're there to help. But then there's also a level of voters who I think that this would, if we move forward, this would disenfranchise, where they vote for their party. Maybe they're not engaged as much with local politics, but they support the party and their values because they know that representative serves them. So I am also against this as well.
Councilmember Love.
To me, Richard, I was going to vote yes, because I don't think it's going to make a difference in the third ward, in the lower wards anyway. I think just what Sandra said, people vote name recognition, and people that has been serving their community, just as this is my first term, but just as Kelly's in his this will be his third term when he win. People know Kelly when he come to the door. I don't think it's going to make a difference in the lower wards anyway. So I'll take a shot and voting with you. I'll say yes, but I don't think it's going to make a difference.
Okay, thank you.
So one other thing, when the other party runs a good candidate, even under the quote machine back then, okay, Carl Toohey almost beat Mayor Erastus Corning. Some say he really did. All right. Howard Nolan almost beat a Democrat. He almost beat Howard Nolan. So if they put up good candidates, and then I look out at Colonnade, look at, God bless Fred Field that passed away yesterday. What a gentleman he was. Well liked, whatever. It's a great candidate. Went on to do many good things. Next time when he stepped down, they didn't have the best candidate. Democrats finally come up with a good candidate and they win. So if you have a good candidate, you got a shot. And if you work at it, no matter what party you are. So I think that's very
well, it's not about partisanship. It's about nonpartisanship, and not necessarily about giving Republicans or others a chance. It's about, expanding the ability of voters to have a choice. And
I think there's some other things that have to be done.
And I can read the writing on the wall here. I put the issue forward. This is Albany. I didn't really expect this to be the place where it would, something like this would take off. But, you know, let's be honest, when we do elections, and I've done that, I think we've all done that, we look at our voters in a primary. Then we look at our prime voters, and those are the people we focus on. And it's a continually narrow base of people in terms of that we reach out to, whose votes we seek, and who we encourage to get involved in the political process. There are candidates that try to get more people involved, but still, that's the nature of elections, is that you have a constantly narrowing base because you're looking at your prime voters, and that as that prime voter list narrows, those are the people you reach out to and want to get involved and turn out, because that's how you secure a victory. The whole idea and why cities do nonpartisan elections is because municipal government, that level of government closest to the people, should be the most nonpartisan and should involve as many people as possible in the process without creating barriers. And we know election laws in New York and party enrollment in New York and the ability to participate in primaries. There are barriers that are set up. You can't move your registration back and forth to be able to participate in the process. You have to wait a while. And so that's one of the barriers that are there. We talk about open primaries as a way to reform the system in some areas. This, in fact, is a way of having an open primary by bringing more people in and really bringing more people into the process. And what this really is about expanding the voter base, voter enfranchisement, so more people can participate, especially when you look at numbers where you see that the enrollment going down and the people who don't identify with a party affiliation increasing. And, you know, the elections that tend to jump around are primary elections. September, June, sometimes are changed because of religious holidays. November general election is a static election day that you always know when it's going to happen, and it's easy to identify when it's going to happen. So, you know, I understand that the reluctance. I think it's something that we should allow the voters to decide because it is an important issue, and it would be a good discussion to have in November. But you know, I see where we are in terms of that, but I wanted to put the issue forward and, you know, have that discussion. Joyce?
What other city does this, Richard?
I mean, I did include, you know, about 3/4 of cities nationwide. In New York, there is some experience in Watertown. Actually, New York City does have nonpartisan elections for special elections when there's a vacancy in a municipal office. But if we look at other cities, the larger cities nationwide that do it, we have Los Angeles, Chicago. I've often used Chicago and Mayor Lori Lightfoot as an example of someone who probably would not have been able to be elected if under a nonpartisan system, because she was a community activist, built her electoral base out of the community, not out of a partisan political system. And you also think of Chicago as the poster child of the Democratic machine, which Albany used to be the poster child of Democratic machine also. Chicago now has nonpartisan elections. Phoenix, San Antonio, Dallas, San Diego, San Jose, Detroit, San Francisco, Jacksonville, Austin, Texas, Columbus, Fort Worth, Memphis, Boston, El Paso, Milwaukee, Denver, Seattle, Las Vegas, Portland. That's a mix of cities, diverse cities with different partisan political makeups, some of which have had storied Democratic machines like Chicago, like Boston, which have moved to a nonpartisan form of electoral process. So as I say, it is the norm in nationwide. It's not necessarily something that is widespread here in New York. There are examples of nonpartisan elections. And I think Karen referenced the 16 citywide positions we have that are nonpartisan. I believe she was referring to library and school board elections in the city of Albany, which are nonpartisan.
So what's the chance that you think that hypothetically Willie Bobo won the primary, and then somebody come in the general election, one of these nonpartisan lines, what's the chance you think that they're going to win? It's just to get the votes, just to make sure more
No, it
people
would be
come
the
out?
election, you wouldn't have a primary, you would have the election in November, so it would be.
Oh, so you trying to eliminate the primary?
It would eliminate the primary because then everybody.
Oh, no, I take my yes vote now. I take it
that.
back. No, I take my yes vote back. I didn't know this would eliminate the primary,
Well,
no.
I will say, in all honesty, we are a partisan political body. So I don't think that a partisan political body is likely to be the body that would want to move to a nonpartisan system.
No.
Considered all storied partisanship, that is probably the case. I think it is the right way to go. I think it is the way of the future. I think Albany is changing. And if we want to grow and modernize, we've got to grow and modernize with the times and not stay where we are. The insurgency that kind of broke the machine started in my ward. It was how I got involved and how it opened up the process for people to be involved. That happened back then. It was a long process. And I think at some point we probably will have nonpartisan elections because I think the level of partisanship, people don't identify with it as much as they used to. And I think especially, again, we're talking only about the municipal level where there's commonality of interest in city services and how municipal government operates. And what people expect from municipal government. And that's why nonpartisanship is so common on the municipal level and why cities have moved in that direction, especially older cities, as I say, like Boston and Chicago, which had storied democratic, machines, but realized that they had to change to involve more people and bring more people involved. And those are two very diverse cities. So do I hear a motion to move this out of committee with a favorable recommendation? Do I hear a motion to move it out of committee without recommendation?
No.
Do I hear a motion to move it out with a negative recommendation?
Well, I'm not.
I'm not going to entertain that. So I will.
Okay.
I will say we'll just leave it where it is, and I'll just note that our next committee meeting is next Tuesday, the 23rd. We're going to take up the ethics local law, which also has been pending, and I have not gotten any comments, although people had suggested that they might have comments, not from anyone on this committee, but from other people, et cetera. But that is something that I think I'd like to really try and move forward, and we can have that discussion at our next meeting.
Question, so what happens to this one? Local law?
It sits, there's nothing, it's in committee. I'm not gonna, I can move to discharge it, but I'm not gonna spend more time on it.
Withdraw it then to clarify.
I could, I think it's the right thing to do, but I think it takes time to move people along.
Richard?
I think it's gonna be, this not gonna be an easy sell, Richard.
What?
This won't be an easy sell. This one.
No, I understand that because again, with all due respect, you're not going to get what is a very partisan body to really want to change. I think, in all honesty, I think there's complacency with where we are. And so, that's I think part of the story. And
Okay.
I think, when you're complacent with where you are, you're not going to grow. You're not going to involve more people. You're not going to change. And, I think that's something we have to do. I think it's going to happen at some point, but it's not going to happen before this year is out.
No, we won't see this no time soon, Richard. We won't see this no time soon.
I'd like to say to some of the younger members and the newer members, I tell every year, I used to hear when I go out for petitions, oh, it must be election time. I got tired of hearing it. So I started walking, the Sunday before Super Bowl and then right on through till I covered the whole ward. And I would drop Republican doors, ring every doorbell going. And some years, even when I was doing signatures, I would stop at the Republican door, you just can't ignore anybody. And it's not fair to us.
That's true.
Yeah, okay. I don't know how, if the old committee system works anymore, because I really don't see much of it in my ward. I don't even know who my committee people are.
Now,
If there is,
Richard, one other thing about your
Yep.
legislation next week.
Yep.
I looked at it and I think it's a pretty good piece. I don't know why you had it out there a lot of times. You just keep changing it, but this looks pretty good.
yeah, it's not, no, just a little bit preliminary. It's been out there for a while. You know, it's one of those things where you need to have the time to really put it together. And, you know, I guess stepping down as president pro tem maybe gave me some more time to focus on things.
Pretty good.
It was, I did it, there was actually Barb Samuel at the time helped draft it. I did include a comparison of what the current state requirements are. At the time, Albany County adopted ethics reform, and I think there's a comparison there of that. And then what this proposal would do. This proposal is based loosely on an ethics reform that was adopted in the city of Yonkers by voter referendum. This does not require a voter referendum. I have, you know, solicited comment from the law department and from others. And everyone said, looks good, but I've never gotten any comment really back on it. No one has come out and, you know, negative or whatever. So I feel pretty comfortable with it. And, you know, in terms of moving forward, it's a comprehensive reform. JR, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I know Richard and you and I have spoken about this, but just wanted to give the committee members a heads up for the next meeting. Albany is one of the very few municipalities that does not have an ethics. General municipal law requires us to have one. So we're really behind on it.
Yeah. Is there anything that members would want in advance of next week's meeting on this topic?
No, I just go over and read it again and make some notes, but I thought it looked pretty good.
Okay. You know, I am gonna, there were some recommendations from NICOM that I need to really pull back and look at again, because I think they had some, I think it's consistent with what NICOM's, you know, standards and recommendations are, but I want to, and JR, if you can look at that also to see if there's anything that we should.
I'll pull it again.
Okay, adjust. But if so, I think it could be it's a major piece of legislation, a long time in coming, and I'd like to be able to move that. It does also create an ethics committee or commission, which is something that we do not have, and I think that we should have as well. So if there's no further business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
By Mr. Igo, seconded, and by Mr. Kimbrough. All in favor, aye. Committee is
Aye.
adjourned.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, even if you didn't agree with me.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.